Happy Thursday, January 4th. Spartans, welcome back. I hope your break resulted in your cup fillething over, so to speak, of holiday spirit. You can see the agenda today. We are talking about Citizens United, and then you got a short article to read for tomorrow regarding investing in place as a potential means as reducing our incarceration rates. Be reminded, if you haven't watched the video that was assigned prior to break, do so. Otherwise, talking today about Citizens United is not going to make sense. And you do need to check in. Second reminder, you do need to check in sometime this week, either by email or by Zoom. Today or tomorrow, Zoom is 1:40 to 2:25. But check in with me at least, well, check in with me once this week. Let's get into it. The video guide, the documentary, Citizen Coke talked about, kind of detailed the potential dangers of what can happen if corporate leaders, in this case, the Koch brothers, have shared interests with politicians. Governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker. The Koch brothers had industries, they had businesses in the state of Wisconsin. And it took up the issue, the documentary took up the issue of campaign finance in regards to what corporate leaders or corporations are doing in connection with politicians. The Koch brothers were giving significant sums of money to Scott Walker. They don't live in Wisconsin. Why are they giving him money? Is it because they politically support him? Maybe, probably not. When we're talking about the vast sums of money they can give, the video alleges, the documentary alleges that they were doing it because Scott Walker, being the governor of Wisconsin, would reduce the potentiality of unions having strength and could very much benefit their businesses. So if the Koch brothers don't have to deal with the unions, that means they're probably going to be able to save some money on labor. And, let's be very clear about this, right? I'm an executive office holder of the teachers union at Simley High School, right? I'm the vice president. I'm the lead negotiator. I'm not stupid to this either. I'm well aware that there are problems in unions, right? The president of Education Minnesota makes more than $200,000 a year. She makes more than twice what I make on an annual basis. Most of the leaders of Education Minnesota make almost twice as much as what I make. $130,000, $140,000, $150,000 a year. And I pay their salary. My union dues that I pay for union protection pays their salaries. I'm well aware. Nothing in life is free, and no one does things because they support it or they believe in it. Most people are doing things because they get paid a pretty healthy salary to do it, or they have some sort of benefit. But the Koch brothers are supporting Scott Walker for some sort of business interest, business gain in the state of Wisconsin. And Scott Walker is going to do what the Koch brothers want because they give him campaign money. Politicians need money to be elected. Case in point, in the video has a segment where a blogger more or less tricks Scott Walker into thinking that he's speaking to David Koch over the phone. If our politicians and our corporate leaders have shared interests, is there a chance that the exploitation, marginalization, or disenfranchisement of the American voter can happen? And the documentary says yes. Who are the politicians going to pick up a phone call from? Are they going to pick up a phone call from me, a high school teacher in Inver Grove Heights, Minnesota? Are they going to pick up a phone call from George Soros, billionaire Democratic campaign donator, or the Koch brothers, billionaire Republican campaign donators? Right? This is the crux of the industrial complex. If there is a shared interest between our corporations and our government, can we lose out? Can we lose say? Can we lose equal representation? And this really became an issue, as the documentary pointed out, in 2010, Citizens United versus the Federal Election Committee. Supreme Court ruled in 2010 that regulating the campaign activities, whether it's in donations or actually running advertisements and supporting or opposing candidates, cannot be regulated by the United States government. The candidates themselves can be controlled. The candidates themselves can be regulated because the government has the right to set up rules for its elections. But can corporations, entities that are not connected to a candidate, that are not the candidate themselves, can they be controlled or regulated? And they ruled no, that it is a violation of their First Amendment right. If I can donate as a citizen, if I can donate to a campaign or endorse a candidate or oppose a candidate or endorse an initiative or oppose an initiative, why do corporations not have the same protection? And they ruled that the regulation of it, for as long as those rules had existed, they ruled that it was unconstitutional, that it was unfair. Then we get another decision at a lower level, right, that regulates what political action committees and super political action committees can do. A political action committee is basically like a booster club, a parent-teacher association, a parent-teacher organization. Their job is to raise money to support the school or the hockey team or whatever it is. But in this regards, a political action committee is a booster program, a fundraising program, a group to support candidates or political initiatives. They too ruled with Citizens United that their activities, as long as they are not directly connected to a candidate, which good luck defining that. If they are not directly related to a candidate, then they can spend what they want. They can receive donations in any amount of money. They can run advertisements for or against politicians or initiatives. They too have a First Amendment protection. And this is problematic. Excuse me. This is problematic because now we don't know where a lot of this money is coming from. There have been billions of dollars spent in recent elections, right? Each year that number gets higher. Each year that number gets higher. And sometimes we have no idea where the money is coming from. Is it coming from one or two people? Is it coming from 100 people? Is it coming from industries? There's potentiality that this money is coming from foreign governments, from foreign adversaries. It'd be quite dangerous, right? Think about the 2016 presidential election with Russian interference and quote unquote fake news. We have no idea where this money is coming from. There's a lot of what we would call dark money, untraceable money. Because political action committees, super political action committees, a lot of the times they don't have to document who is giving them the money. We also need to understand that this has an impact on narrative. Right? In the documentary, they talked about something called right to work. Right? Scott Walker talked about Wisconsin being open for business and everybody has the right to a job. Great. Sounds wonderful. But you have to understand what that means. Right to work means end the unions, end labor unions. If we were to go back to the 1800s, the beginning of the 1900s, we had some families in the United States. Think Carnegie, Rockefeller. You had people that were earning hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars over the course of their career. While the rest of us Americans, the common folk, were living in squalor, poverty. Labor unions more or less organized to get workers to come together as one and negotiate as one. Because here's the thing, if we're all separate and individual, I really don't have a whole lot of power as an individual employee or worker against the leader of a company. Person could say no, person could say yes, person could say you're fired, he hires or she hires somebody new, they go on making money. But if the workers are all united and work together and they stop working, then the corporate leader, the owner of the company has some decisions to make. Because if everyone stops working all at once, that person can't go hire a complete new staff. And even if they can hire a complete new staff, there's going to be a period of no production. There's going to be a period of training and getting people to figure out what they need to do. And all of this leads to them losing money because they can't make any money if they have nothing to sell. Now, full disclosure, right? I'm a school teacher, part of the union. I'm the lead negotiator. I'm the vice president. No bias here. I can fully explain to you in detail to you how Education Minnesota, the union that I'm a part of, also has some corruption, right? Our president of Education Minnesota makes $200,000 and some a year that I pay. that every teacher in this state pays money to her to be the president of the union, right? There's definitely some exploitation happening. But, as a worker, I get two choices. I cannot have a union and allow my employer to make more money, or I can have a union and allow the leader of that group to make a significant amount of money, knowing that in some way, shape, or form, I'm going to benefit from it. But these are the things we have to understand because of these recent changes. Nothing in life is free. The right to work, right? The right to have a job sounds great, but it comes at a cost. Being pro-labor, supporting the worker, supporting the average man sounds great, but it also comes with a cost. It's going to come with the cost of you're going to have labor unions that have administrators that make a lot of money. It's also going to lead to a rise in prices because companies are going to have to charge more to make the same product. Nothing is free. Prior to Citizens United, again, campaign activity when it comes to finances and what corporations were doing were controlled. For a long time, the government had something called, or the courts agreed that there was something called the compelling interest. Anytime our fundamental constitutional rights are limited, anytime our constitutional rights are limited, the right to keep and bear arms, the right to protection from illegal searches and seizures, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, any of those things. Anytime our constitutional rights are inhibited or minimized, the government has to prove that it has a compelling interest. Compelling interest is one that is essential and necessary. It's not a matter of choice. It's not a matter of decision-making, and it's not a matter of preference. To summarize, it's a really, really, really good reason. We have the First Amendment right to the freedom of speech, but that doesn't allow you to go into a dark movie theater and yell fire or yell shooter or yell there's a bomb. We have the right to freedom of expression, but you can't, or speech, but you can't walk on a plane in the middle of the flight and yell that there's a bomb aboard. Can't do it. Why? Because there's a compelling interest. A really good reason. We can't have complete and total chaos. We can't have anarchy. The implication of the, sorry, the, well, yeah, yes, the application would be the better word. The application of any sort of compelling interest has to be very strict in its impact. Even though we cannot yell fire in a dark, crowded movie theater, the impact of that restriction is relatively limited in regards to the rest of our constitutional rights. We still have the freedom of speech. We still have the freedom of expression. That's not inhibited by people walking into a movie theater and yelling fire. We still have the right to freedom of expression and speech, but that's not inhibited by people not being able to say bomb on a plane. If you're going to limit our fundamental rights, you have to have a good reason. And if you're limiting that fundamental right, it cannot leak into or not bleed into other rights. Okay, you can still say what you want to say in most regards, but there are some things that you can't say. You cannot cause absolute panic. It would be detrimental to society. Another way to think of compelling interest and strict scrutiny, the best, I've done this for about 15 years now, is to discuss child pornography. Now, I've never come across a serious student, a mature student, that ever tried to argue that child pornography and child participating in pornographic materials should not be prevented, should not be prohibited. I think we all can agree that the government has an interest that is essential and necessary in regards to not allowing children under the age of 18 from participating in pornographic material, right? Compelling interest, exploitation, abuse, manipulation, marginalization, human trafficking, all of these things, right? That's the really, really good reason. And its application is relatively strict. Now, so I'm told, you can find pornographic material wherever you want on the internet. Pornographic material is still available. The expression protected by the First Amendment is still there. Preventing children from participating in it has not stopped the production of pornographic material, since it was, more or less protected in Supreme Court decisions. I'm pretty sure it's Jacobellis versus Ohio, Potter Stewart, obscenity. I know it when I see it. It's been protected for 60 some years now. Strict, right? The government has a really good reason. Children can't participate in this. We know the reasons why. It's still produced, meaning that the prevention of children participating in these materials hasn't affected anything else. It's very finite in its impact. Give you an example of where this law went, where that prevention went a little far, is Ashcroft versus the Free Speech Coalition. There was a law passed in the early 2000s called the Child Pornography Prevention Act. And again, it detailed, minors, people under 18 can't participate in these types of films. But this is also at the beginning of the computer-generated images. And the law went a little bit further. The law said that computer-generated images, CGI, computer-generated images of children participating in these films is also prohibited. And in the oral arguments of the decision, the government argued that even if it is CGI, so not an actual child, not an actual actor, not an actual human, CGI images of child pornography would actually lead to an increase in potential child abuse, child harm, child pornography. And Supreme Court struck it down. They said the law went too far. And again, while the compelling interest might have been there, we get into the impact of it. It wasn't strict. It wasn't finite. The law got into ideas. CGI, a computer-generated image, or an adult actor portraying to be a child. These are not children. These are not real people. These are, if you're looking at the intent and purposes of it, this is an idea. Can we rule that some ideas are bad? Should we get into the area of policing people's ideas, even if they're their most putrid, base, vile ideas? And the Supreme Court ruled no. We cannot regulate ideas. We cannot have laws preventing ideas, even as abhorrent as it is. What is stopping the government then? If you allow them to prohibit people from having ideas in one area, what then stops the government from limiting ideas in another area? Think about the course of human history and Isaac Newton in gravity, once considered to be an abomination and a sin, or the sun rotating around the earth instead of vice versa. The earth rotates around the sun. Ideas that were very volatile at the time, not accepted at the time. I mean, these people were persecuted for those ideas. Can you limit ideas? Supreme Court said no. We all will agree that there's a compelling interest to prevent children from participating in pornography. Right? It does not require further elaboration. Preventing children from participating in pornographic material, very strict. It doesn't affect that industry whatsoever. It doesn't affect the pornographic industry or the adult entertainment industry. It's still made to this day. But when the law went one step further and tried to start regulating ideas, then it lost its strict scrutiny. What ideas are okay? What ideas are not okay? Who gets to make that decision? The reason I bring this up is to go back to Citizens United. For a long time, the Supreme Court ruled that there was a compelling interest to control the relationship between corporations and political activity, whether directly with the candidate or independently from the candidate. That corruption could happen, disenfranchised can happen. Wealthy people could gain too much influence over our politicians compared to the common folk like us. In 2003, there was a Supreme Court decision, McConnell versus the FEC, the Federal Elections Committee, where the Supreme Court justices pointed out, the conservative ones, we understand, they said, we understand the potentiality of corruption that can occur, a close relationship that can develop if we don't regulate campaign activities of the wealthiest Americans and in corporations, what they can and cannot do, what they can and cannot spend. But the Supreme Court justices pointed out now 21 years ago that limiting what corporations can spend and what individuals can spend and what they both can do in regards to campaigns may actually not be very strict in its impact. Think about this, and I've already said it. What do politicians need to get elected? And the answer is money. There's a reason why most of our elected officials in government, at the very least at the US level, presidents, senators, representatives, they're all millionaires. They're all wealthy. They need money to be elected. They need money to survive while they are running for office, because undoubtedly they're going to have to stop working their job. If controlling what people can donate and controlling what people can do who are not the candidates themselves, are we in fact preventing new candidates from being able to run for office? And this is where the strict scrutiny goes away. You're trying to prevent one thing, a potential compelling interest, great. But are you actually damaging other people's rights? Is this bleeding into preventing other candidates from running for office? Again, I would imagine most of you are not thrilled about two octogenarians running for president again, Donald Trump and Biden, the rematch. Is limiting campaign finance creating this situation? 7 years later, Citizens United, 2010, that's what they ruled. And it's unconstitutional. It's not strict in its impact, and it's detrimental, not just to our fundamental rights of freedom of expression and speech, but detrimental to allowing new blood to enter into our government. For tomorrow, you have a reading to do, Investing in Place. Now, we're not reading this entire article, so I want to point it out to you, and I want to make sure, since we had a little situation last time, I already double checked it, but I'm going to do it again. It works. You're going to scroll down to where it says a holistic look at place-based drivers and solutions to violence. You're only going to read this bottom part here, so make sure you scroll down. We're going to take a look at potentially a way to minimize crime from the beginning, before it even happens, right? Punishment, imprisonment, those are all things that happen after a crime is committed. We've already talked about punishment doesn't stop crime. People who are going to murder are going to murder. People who are going to rob are going to rob. People who are going to rape are going to rape. But if you do something before that choice is made, if you do something before that behavior is carried out, can you minimize crime? How can you minimize crime? So we're going to look at this. So read the article, answer the questions that are attached for tomorrow, and I'll see you guys on Friday. Go Spartans.